I'll say this for him, he's consistent.
Well, he's been so consistent all year.
Not the taste, consistency.
Consistently, yes.
Consistency!
Thanks, losers.
Welcome to another edition of the Fantasy Baseball Consistency Show. I'm your host, Wes Easley. Bob Lung is the creator of all this, but he's not able to be with us tonight. He told me just to take the reins and just go with it. So I brought along with me, like two cowboys, Nick Young and Lucas Biery. Am I saying that right, Lucas?
That is correct.
All right. And Nick, we're glad you're joining us as well. Both of you guys have been experts so far on writing articles for Big Guy Fantasy Sports on the consistency rankings at Big Guy Fantasy Sports. You know, I don't know if you guys know this or not. I'm sure you've been in many fantasy leagues before. Consistency is such a key part of the scoring system. If you own a team, you just want the team to be able to consistently perform week in and week out to give you a fighting chance. I know it's especially true for football, and what Big Guy Fantasy Sports has done is it's brought that kind of consistency rankings and scoring over to the baseball side of things as well. This is the first year we're doing this, and you can actually go to bigguyfantasysports.com, and you can visit that website, and you can see all the different football articles. You can see all the past football rankings, but more than importantly, for coming up here in the baseball season, you can see the Big Guy Fantasy Sports baseball consistency rankings. All you got to do is go to the baseball tab. I've been playing around with this, guys, and Nick, I don't know if you've played around with it a lot. I know you've written a couple of articles and done some research, but every position is broken down. You can go to that Fantasy Baseball Consistency show there on that baseball link. You can find all the past podcasts. You can also find all the articles from our experts, and then boom, right there, the Fantasy Baseball Consistency Report. What you do is you put in your league scoring if you want to. If not, just kind of look around at it and play around at it. You can see an overall picture, like for a position, like we're going to do tonight. We're going to talk about starting pitchers. We're going to talk about second baseman. We're going to talk about third baseman tonight. But you can see that big overall picture of the consistency for each one of those positions. Every player, every position, consistency from fantasy week to week, all broken down. Then you know what you got. I don't know if you guys have done this or not, how far you've played around with it on other things other than your own articles. But you can actually click on a player's name, and you can see how he starts off the season, how he ends up in the middle of the season, you know, those long dog days of August, or how he finishes a season. And that's my favorite part, because we're all in this fantasy league together, right? The Big Guy Fantasy League, we're going to be in that together?
Yep, we are.
Okay. So I don't know if you've heard the warning or not, but I love to trade players. And this is going to be one of my favorite things to do this year, is to look and see how a player starts off the season. And if he starts off real hot, I guarantee you guys, I'm going to be trading him. If he ends up on a little cold streak somewhere, I'm going to be trading him right there to you. When you see trades from me, you're going to be like, that guy is crazy. And to be honest with you, I am a little bit crazy when it comes to fantasy sports. Okay? I'm just going to be completely honest with you. But if I also know that a player is going to get hot, you know, maybe he starts off the year real cold and then he gets hot, man, I'm going to be trying to buy him from you left and right. I'm just warning you right now. Is fair warning?
Yeah, this year's going to be fun.
It is going to be fun. You know what the best thing about this is? This website right now? It's absolutely free. Since the breakdown of the player's stats is somewhat of a new concept for fantasy baseball, what Bob wanted to do was he wanted to bring this to everybody free. This can completely give you the edge in your fantasy league, I believe, this year. Not many things in life either are free, but this is, and it is a lot of great data and information right there at your fingertips. What do you guys like best about these consistency rankings? Nick, what would you like best about it?
Pretty much it's helping me plan for my draft and everything. Who to go after, who not to touch, and we're gonna discuss some of the players I'm not even gonna touch this year.
Yeah, Lucas, I know you're deep. I've seen several articles of yours in different websites and different things. What has consistency rankings brought to your analysis of fantasy baseball?
Yeah, so I only had a chance to work with the consistency rankings this winter, working with you guys and Bob Lung as well. With the consistency rankings, it's kind of been one of those situations where You get to detach the name away from the numbers and kind of see who's doing what. Obviously, I did second base. You got a guy such as Eduardo Escobar. I mean, if you were just gonna draft off of his stats last year, he'd be going in the fourth, fifth round with those 130 something RBIs. But obviously, you can get a great discount if you think he's going to do something similar. I personally think he's going to drop back a bit, but it's interesting to kind of look at these guys without their names, looking at just the numbers on the consistency stuff.
Yeah, we're going to talk about Eduardo Escobar a little bit later. I'm going to question you on this guy right here because, like you said, he was on fire last year. One of the things I'm going to definitely do, too, with these consistency reports is I'm going to build that, I don't know, that core group of my guys that there's no way I'm going to get rid of because I know they're not going to turn cold because I've seen that throughout past seasons they have consistently scored every single week. And that's what I'm looking for is that consistency in scoring. Usually what happens with me in fantasy baseball is if a player is red hot, I'm like, I got to trade him before he gets ice cold, you know? But like there are some players that we'll talk about them tonight that I just regretted trading last year. And if I would have had a consistency report last year, there's no way I would have got rid of them. But Nick, let's start with you. Let's start with you looking at your starting pitcher tiers and how you broke them down according to that consistency report. In tier 1, this is the first article. These are articles you can find on Big Guy Fantasy Sports. Jacob deGrom's clutch rating was a surprise to me in this group. This group consisted of Garrett Cole, Jacob deGrom, Max Scherzer. What was going on with Jacob deGrom?
That's actually one of the things that surprised me too. I had him on a bunch of my teams going into this past season, and looking over his stats again, pretty much everything had dropped. He went to only 255 strikeouts and a 2.43 ERA in 2019, compared to a 1.7 ERA and 269 strikeouts. I think he could bounce back to his 2018 form, but it's going to be a wait and see. And it's still surprising that he was still the third highest fantasy pitcher in the league last year.
Yeah, especially if you see his clutch rate at 54%, it kind of makes you scratch your head a little bit and say, wait a minute, what was going on with him? And when you came up with these tiers, I scratched my head whenever I looked at tier 2 because I saw Justin Verlander, who had the second highest point total, had a clutch rate in the elite numbers, in the elite percentages, being drafted this year in some mock drafts that I've been a part of, either taken first or taken second. But I notice you have him ranked in your second tier. Why isn't he in the first tier?
So one of the great things about the Astros last season was it had Justin Verlander, Garrett Cole, and then they brought in Zach Greinke in the middle of the season.
Yeah.
Without Garrett Cole being there, I don't see Justin Verlander getting as much rest as he needs, and they're going to pitch him more, causing everything to drop, in my opinion. His points might stay the same, but his clutch rate is going to go down. That's why I put him in the second tier.
Okay, that's good reasoning. That's good rationale. I have toyed around in mock drafts. I don't know if you guys get into mock drafts or not, but I've toyed around with them where I just draft starting pitchers right at the start of it and try to see how my team ends up because starting pitching is so valuable. It seems like nowadays in fantasy baseball, I know it's always been valuable, but now with the amount of home runs and runs that teams are giving up, it seems like good starting pitching is so valuable. And you're going to be able to find that at Big Guy Fantasy Sports, whose clutch rate, who performs week in and week out, and doesn't matter the matchups, right? And I think that's a lot of times what starting pitching is kind of centered around is who they're matched up against.
Definitely.
In your third tier, we talked about this a little bit before the show. When I looked at your third tier, I said, okay, he misspelled Aaron Nola. He spelled it Julio Teheran. I thought that's maybe what you did. In my head, it doesn't look like he belongs in this tier with the Kershaws and the Greinkes. Why did you put him in tier number 3? You are our expert, so I'm going to turn to you.
So Teheran has no option but to improve. And let's face it, the Braves have always had less than stellar pitching, but I think this could be a bounce back year for him. So that's why I put him there. He's going to be a flyer, but I think he's going to be worth it.
Okay. All right. I think the Braves will be a real hot team this year. I'm trying to get as much Braves as I possibly can, not just because I'm in Alabama. I'm a Cubs fan at heart, but I think the Braves are going to be red hot this year, man.
I'm from South Carolina, so I've always pulled for the Braves.
I got you. All right, so let's turn over to you, Lucas, if you don't mind, over in your second base article that you wrote. When I look at this, you got the top two ranked tier one second baseman. I think it makes a lot of sense. Jose Altuve and Whit Merrifield. Obviously, Jose Altuve, because of his pop in his bat, Ed gives you a little bit of stolen bases. I don't think he runs as much as he used to, but Whit Merrifield is one of those guys that you can count on week in and week out.
Absolutely. I think that we have a chance to see a vintage Altuve season. If you're expecting around that 300 batting average, I mean, could spike up to maybe 310, 315 if he gets a little bit lucky. I don't think it's going to dip down below a 290, more than likely. As far as the stolen bases, I would expect anywhere between about 8 to 12 steals. He's got the sprint speed and the athleticism to steal bases. He's just kind of preserving his health, and that's just not been the Astros' philosophy. But underneath the new manager and Dusty Baker, it's not impossible to see him in the teens for steals. And as far as Merrifield, if you just take a look at this guy's batting average, I mean, he's regularly 300 batting average. He regularly hits 40 plus doubles. He's going to hit teen home runs for you, plenty of RBIs, 100 runs or so, and double-digit steals. I mean, I think Merrifield, he stole 20 bases last year, got caught 10 times. That's obviously a poor success rate for a guy who's 31 already. I wouldn't expect more than maybe 15 steals, but I think across the board he's going to be able to give you solid numbers, and I think he's very steady and dependable.
I'm gonna love, and I don't. This is gonna sound terrible. I don't watch a lot of baseball. I keep up with the box scores. I keep up with the numbers. I keep up with the fantasy stats, far too much, in my wife's opinion. But I just don't watch a lot of baseball. I can't sit down and watch it. I love listening to Braves games because they're on the radio. I love listening to the Braves games on the radio while I piddle around the house or while I do something out in the garage. I love doing that. But the Kansas City Royals, the way they run, they've got some big bats in their lineup. I think they're going to be a really fun team to watch this year. Now I gotta stick up for my guy here. If he was here, I think he would be having a conniption, is what they call it, I believe. Aaron Pags would totally disagree with you that you did not put Villar in tier one. I almost bought Aaron a Villar poster one time. Him and I we were texting back and forth, and I was like, I'm just gonna buy this guy a Villar poster so he can put it up in his room somewhere. With Jonathan Villar having a possibility of having 20 home runs, 40 steal season again, and an 83% clutch rate, he was like the number one ranked clutch player in among the second basemen. But you didn't put him in tier one this year. Why not?
Yeah, I definitely think that you can easily see Villar going off for another 20-something homers and 40 steals, but I think the downside is absolutely huge. This is a guy you're going to have to spend a third-round pick on based on the NFBC ADP that I've been looking at here lately. Over the past month, he's been around pick 42. So basically, he's either your second or your third hitter if you went with any pitching. And he hasn't even posted an 800 offs since 2016 when he had that ridiculous season. I think this is a guy where obviously the ballpark shift going from very friendly Baltimore to Miami is going to hurt him. And I just think that if you're depending on this guy for the majority of your steals, there's a good chance that he comes up empty. And that's just one of those things where I like to shift my steals around. I can easily see the upside, but this is a guy that personally I don't want in any of my teams. And I'm trying to reflect that with my ranks so the readers can see where I'm coming from.
I agree. That's what hinders me from getting him as well, is how high he's going in drafts. Now, I will say this. I thought the same thing about him going to Miami. I'm like, oh, he's a dead man walking now because he's going to Miami. But Miami has revamped their stadium a little bit. Yet to see how different it's going to be now that they moved the walls in to give it more of a home run environment. But I don't know how much he will be affected by that stadium altogether. I guess we're going to have to wait and see which way the wind is blowing in Miami nowadays.
And I will say with VR, kind of like we said with that third round pick, whenever I'm building my team, I was kind of citing Altuve and Whit Merrifield's steals totals being in the teens. That's not going to excite anyone. No, it's not. But I like to go ahead and build up really, really reliable hitters, and I really avoid drafting bad hitters. You'll never see my team with a Malik Smith or even a Gerard Dyson on there. I just like to go for the best hitters I can and then figure out the steals from there.
You put a big smile on my face because that means that I'll be able to get Mondesi somewhere around the same time with Merrifield. If we're drafting next to each other, I'll get Mondesi. I just like Mondesi. He's one of my favorite players.
I like Mondesi too. I think the difference with him and some of these other guys is that he has that opportunity to hit 13 to 17, 18 homers because he's not a horrible hitter. He's definitely nowhere near the hitter of the other guys in that round, but he's got that opportunity to steal 50 bases. But the shoulder injury kind of has me slightly off of Mondesi.
I will agree with you. One of my biggest regrets last year, and if I would have had the clutch rate last year, I wouldn't have made this trade. I traded DJ LeMahieu, and you have him in tier number 3. You got a lot of players here. Who do you like most out of tier number 3?
I feel the best with LeMahieu because I think he's got a great opportunity to hit 300. I think 20 homers is doable. I would probably expect more between like 17, 18, 19 homers, but 20 is doable in that short porch because he goes opposite field so much. So I like DJ the most in this tier. Okay.
And he's leadoff for the Yankees. I think he's projected to do that again. Do we have, in tier number 4, you got some people that Tommy Edman, Gavin Lux, how do you say that? Gavin Lux? Is that his name? Gavin Lux?
Yep.
Or is that, I didn't know if it was French. It might have been Lou or something like that. But Gavin Lux, is there any playing time update on those two guys? Because Tommy Edman led me to a championship last season because he was just on fire for the Cardinals at the end of the year. And he was playing on my squad at the end of the year, just that championship week. And I'm concerned about his playing time. I'm concerned about Gavin Lux's playing time. Is there any update on that?
I would not be worried really much at all about Edman. I mean, there's a small concern, but I watched a decent amount of Cardinals towards the end of the year, and not only is Matt Carpenter looked to be finished, they're going to put Edman in there to finish out the game defensively. He's got an absolute cannon for an arm. So in those weekly leagues, even if he doesn't necessarily start every day, he'll come in there, he'll steal some bases off the bench, and he'll give you some value. He'll also play plenty of outfield too because Harrison Bader is a terrible hitter. Fowler is kind of only playing based on the monetary reasons there. So I think that he's going to play, 3-4 days a week, if not maybe 5 or 6. Once an injury hits, he might easily be cemented into a full-time position.
Now this is you went 5 tiers deep on second baseman. I applaud you for that because I think I went just as deep. I don't know how deep I went on relief pitchers, but there were just so many to choose from. And I think you run into the same thing with second baseman because everybody's like second base, third base eligible, or something like that. Second base, shortstop eligible. There are a lot of people to choose from. But you put Eduardo Escobar in tier number 4. He has a 71% clutch rate, scoring like 611 points, fantasy points last season. You just expect the bottom to fall out from Eduardo Escobar this year.
I don't know if I would necessarily go that far. I hear where you're coming from since I do kind of ding his ranking a little bit. Yeah. I think as far as the the NFBC ADP, you can get around pick 115 overall. That is before my guys Edman and Lux, so I wouldn't feel comfortable doing that necessarily. But I think that you're looking at 25 homers. I think about 80 to 85 RBIs and, maybe 80 runs. I just think that last year's 118 RBIs, 35 homers, I just don't even see that having much of a chance to repeat.
It is an outlier of a season for him. If you look at his complete stats over every year, it's like, what in the world happened last year for that guy? If he put it all together and he can repeat that performance, hats off to him. But he has never done that well in the major leagues. So it'd be interesting to see if he gets to repeat that or not. All right, so in your last tier, you got guys like Ryan McMahon, Garrett Hampson. I hate how Colorado works with the young players there. They don't seem to have a rhyme or a reason for it. And do you have anybody that jumps out at you outside of tier number 5 that you'd like to talk about?
Yeah, within tier 5, you really got a variety of skill sets here. I mean, if you want to pile up with some steals here in your rotisserie types of leagues or head-to-head, if you're a little bit light there and you can afford to use a Kevin Newman or a Colton Wong, I think you're going to be looking at anywhere between about 15 to 23, 24 steals at most for those guys. So that's very good if that's what you need. I will say, and the people that read this stuff, obviously they're probably likely advanced players, so they're going to know their league format. If you're playing within a 10 to 12 team format where you can afford to go for upside, that's when you go for a McMahon or a Hampson. If you have that replaceability. Now, if it's pick 150, 160, and you're on the board and you have to pick these guys in a 15-team league and you're stuck with them, that's a little bit of a different story. That's where, in a lot of my draft and holds so far in other leagues, I've waited and gone for Tommy LaStella. So I think that he has a chance to outperform McMahon, and he's quite a bit cheaper. So that's easily my favorite player in this group is LaStella.
All right. Hey, you both are going to do third baseman because, once again, you kind of intermingle here between second baseman and third baseman. A lot of people are eligible at both positions. This first tier is pretty clear, and my question to both of you is, we got Bregman, Rendon, and Arenado here in the top three or in the top tier. Nick? Do you think that Rafael Devers may be able to take a jump into this tier by season's end?
Based off of everything I'm seeing for his projections, it's saying that he's going to take a drop. Like the one I'm looking at right now has him projected to take 28 home runs instead of his 32. And even his batting average is supposed to take a hit from 311 to 288. Is it possible? Yeah. Is it probable? I don't think so.
Okay. All right. That's
Agreed.
very. Wow. Wow, I got a guy in the other league that I'm in, or another league that I'm in, that just absolutely loves Rafael Devers, and I whenever he's on my team, he's one of those guys that just always seem to disappoint me. You guys, do you have any of those players on your teams that you just end up with every year, and you're like, oh, I ended up with this guy again, and I don't want him on my team.
Yep, I had Devers on my team last year too, and he was a disappointment, to say the least.
I think Rendon can win back-to-back championships for different teams if the Angels can put together a little bit better of a pitching staff. Their pitching staff really kind of bugs me with who they have on their pitching staff. I know you're a big pitching aficionado too, Lucas. What do you think about that pitching staff for the Angels?
They need some serious help, and the fact that Griffin Canning's dealing with some elbow issues is seriously troubling. However, there's one sleeper guy that I really, really like. I think he's a watch list candidate for your 12-team setups, and Patrick Sandoval is that guy where I think if he can get that opportunity, former Houston Astro farmhand is definitely a guy that I have great interest in.
Yeah, and they'll need as many arms as they can in there. And if I know Joe Madden, which I do, being a Cubs fan, he'll have him batting leadoff probably before the end of the season too. So that's a little slight. That's a dig at Joe. I'm sorry. I apologize. Joe Madden brought me a World Series, and I'm sitting here digging at Joe. That's not fair. It's not right.
Well, Joe will put him in a good mood though. So
that's true.
Yeah.
With how he will do that, we will not mention. Anybody have a Suarez update? How is he doing? I know he was injured. Is he back up and at it, or is it going to be opening week for him?
So from what I just read, he's doing batting practice as of Friday, but it's still unclear when he'll get to do any training like Cactus League or anything.
Because I know he's here in tier number 2 for you, Nick, and he was actually a guy that I was really keeping my eye on. He had so many bombs last year, and he had a 75% clutch rate. I just thought that he'd really have a breakout season until he got hurt, and now it's just it let the air out of my Suarez balloon is what it did.
Yeah, it did that to me too, unfortunately.
What about old Josh Donaldson? You have Josh Donaldson down here in tier number 4. Do either one of you expect him to perform just great in Minnesota? I expect big things out of Josh, but his clutch rate last year was only 58%, which is low compared to the other third basemen that we look at as being like one of those top tier third basemen. What are you guys' thoughts on Josh Donaldson?
Donaldson is a guy that if you check out his baseball savant, I think you might have to pick your jaw off your desk as far as those numbers go. He's one of those guys that's 98, 99 percentile in terms of barrels.
Yeah.
As far as the hard hit rate stuff, he's almost 50% of the time hitting the ball extremely hard. The health is a little scary. He's a 34-year-old guy that is not going to have any opportunity to DH with Nelson Cruz in his way. So you're really hoping that he can stay healthy. He's had some serious issues, as I just mentioned, but as far as the core skills, he's 98th percentile in exit velocity, hard hit rate 97%. No question about his skills, but the health is the only concern. So in more of a kind of a 12-team, 10-team setup where you have a good waiver wire, very, very comfortable with him, even slightly ahead of the ADP. 15-team at the ADP, I'm interested, although I do realize that you easily might have to find a replacement for him come June or July.
Yeah, I understand the concerns about his health. It seems like that's what ends up happening with Josh. But he picked up. He was so good for the Braves last year in that Minnesota Twin lineup. It is just that thing is. If you just look up and down that Minnesota Twin lineup, you're like, boy, if I was a pitcher, I'd be scared. I'd be getting sick the night before and just saying, Skip, I can't pitch tomorrow. I'm sorry, I just can't pitch tomorrow. Hey, all these articles.
I have a good bit of Aaron Savali from the Cleveland Indians, and that's a great point. I'm not going to be able to use him much against Minnesota and feel good about it.
No, you're right, and that's one of my fears on the Chicago White Sox as well. That pitching staff looks pretty good from the outside, but when you think about the teams that they got to go up against, oh man, the White Sox seem like they're right at it, but I don't know if they're going to be able to pull it out. All these articles and consistency data are online at bigguyfantasysports.com, along with all of last year's stats. If you have a couple of players that you're kind of, I don't know which guy I should pick, I'm going to encourage you to go to Big Guy Fantasy Sports. Look at that consistency data from last year, those consistency rankings, and maybe that clutch rate will be the deciding factor for you on which guy to pick come draft day. There's some second base and third base undervalued articles that are out there, and you guys both took part in both of those things, and it seemed like your guys intertwined. Lucas, you've mentioned Whit Merrifield as one of your undervalued players, but also I want to talk about Mike Moustakas. You both have him on that list, and you both have Tommy LaStella on that list as well. Nick, I'm gonna let you choose which one you want to pick from. Who you want to talk about, Moustakas or LaStella, and then Lucas, you just go ahead and talk about the other one afterwards.
I'm gonna go with Moustakas here because I also had him on my lineup last year, and I expect great things from him this season. Everything I'm seeing says that it's going to be good year for him. I mean, he's expected to have 30 home runs this year, and I mean, I'm hoping he does good. I'm drafting him this year.
Oh, I love his position there in Cincinnati too. That's a hitter's ballpark. I know Milwaukee was as well, but man, that Cincinnati crew, they have a lot of fun. They seem to have a lot of fun. I think Mike's going to really love. I think the Moose is going to really love being there in Cincinnati. What about LaStella, Lucas?
Yeah, I want to hit LaStella, but as far as Moustakas, I've got a couple of real quick things on him. Looking at just his past 3 years, had that torn ACL in 2016, but those previous 3 years, 17, 18, 19, hit 38, 28, 35 homers. So I think he's surely a lock for 34 to 36 homers in that small Cincinnati bandbox. This is also a guy that, you think of as a huge power hitter, which he is, but he somehow doesn't really strike out that much. So he's going to certainly put the ball in play. Maybe can flirt with 100 RBIs. Only struck out 100 times, a couple of times in his career. So do like that for Moustakas to make some solid contact. As far as LaStella, that's really the name of LaStella's game, is that he is a huge contact guy. He had 16 home runs before he got injured right before the All-Star break. He was actually an All-Star too and had a fractured tibia, but should be back in business. I'm thinking if he can hit at the top of the lineup for Joe Madden on the Angels, right in front of Trout and Rendon, that's going to make this guy a freaking steal. He's going after pick 300 here. Just looking at just the March 1st through March 7th this week, ADP on the NFBC, he's going at pick 305. So the fact that he has second or third, you can do middle or corner in those types of setups, to me, he's an absolute steal. I've got him on about 7 or 8 teams already.
Yeah, I wouldn't be afraid to take him a couple of rounds early, and I'll give you some inside information, maybe. Tommy LaStella, when he was with the Cubs, he was one of Joe Madden's guys. He just was. Joe Madden loved Tommy LaStella. I think his nickname was Mr. 3 a.m. I don't want to know why, but you can Google it to find out why. And but Tommy LaStella is going to be one of Joe's guys, and I know Joe's going to find as much playing time for him as possible. And his injury last year, like you said, was a broken leg, so it's not. He's not going to have. It's not a shoulder. It's not a knee. It's not. It's just he had a broken leg, which I don't want to discount how serious that was, but at the same time, he can bounce back from that quite easily. All right, so we got an undervalued pitcher article, and I want to touch on this because pitchers are so important. Nick, who did you find that you thought were undervalued? That's not going where they should be going. Who did you look at on this list here of ADPs that we broke down earlier this year? Who stuck out for you that were somebody that's just not getting valued where they should?
Honestly, for me, the biggest surprise was Shane Bieber. He was the third best ranked this past year. He was second in clutch rate, and his ADP right now is at basically the third round. For me, he'd be a early to mid second rounder for me. The guy only had a 3.28 ERA. I mean, and a 15-8 win loss record. I mean, he's improved everything since compared to last year, and he's only in his third year in the league this year.
Yeah,
he can continue to get better from his past year.
Yeah, Bieber definitely can perform really well, and with Clevenger out now, they're going to lean upon him a little bit more. You think Lance Lynn? He's also mentioned in your article. You think that he's going to continue to pitch the way he did last season for the Rangers?
I think so. I think he could continue to improve. I mean, if you look at it, he's been improving over the past 3 seasons. I mean, from Minnesota to the Yankees to Texas, each year he's improved by a substantial amount. So, at the minimum, he's going to stay where he is, if not get better.
Okay.
With Lynn, this is one of my biggest targets. I've got him in a few different setups. Piles up the strikeouts. Had 246 strikeouts last year. Interesting thing about him is he was about a 92 mile an hour guy, and then just all of a sudden just jumped up to 94 miles an hour on average. Can hit a little bit higher, but if you take a look at Lynn's career, dating all the way back to 2011, including the year 2019, he's only had an ERA above 4 once that entire time. I thought that was absolutely mind-boggling.
I agree.
I agree with you.
Yeah, I like Lance Lynn. He seems to bounce in and off of our waiver wire sometimes. But last year when he finally midway through the opening part of the season, he wasn't bouncing around anymore. Nobody trusted him.
Nope.
But all of a sudden he was a fixture in somebody's lineup. I can't remember who, but he was a fixture there. All right, so we got just a couple of minutes left. I'm going to give you guys both somebody who I'm looking at here. Sonny Gray. Sonny Gray is going to be my guy. Can I officially call him on my team right now before the draft and say I get to pick Sonny Gray in the draft? Can I do that? Or is he still free game?
What do you think, Lucas? I'm still trying to formulate my opinion.
Well, no, I mean, I'm saying that I get to get him. He's my guy. Sonny Gray is going to be my guy with Cincinnati this year. I loved him last season, and he was 11-8. If you look at if you go back to his consistency chart, here that we have on Big Guy Fantasy Sports, if you look at all the earned runs that he allowed throughout like week 1 through week 25, you barely ever see a week. I think there's 2 weeks here where he allowed more than 4 runs. 3 weeks, excuse me. 3 weeks where he allowed more than 3 runs. Now, I know the Reds are going to score more than 3 runs a game this year. So I'm going to say that Sonny Gray is going to be winning left and right. And it's going to put his clutch rate higher and higher. The dude was striking out people left and right last season. Mm-hmm. Sonny Gray is my guy this season. So I'm getting him.
I love Sonny Gray. I had him on 3 or 4 teams last year just because he was so freaking cheap. It's tough to have that guy that you take in the last few rounds and he works out, and then now you have to pay a pick in the top 100. I mean, that's just a tough pill to swallow. But I do think that he's going to provide some solid stats for you. The fact that he was under a 3.0 ERA in 2019 is freaking ridiculous being in Cincinnati. I think you'd be looking more at a 350 to 360 ERA. But I definitely think he'll give you well over a strikeout per inning, and I would say easily 13 to 15 wins.
Okay, well, he's on Wes's team. I've declared it already, so that's one of the perks. Do you have anybody, Lucas, who you have like as a sleeper pitcher that you would say people need to get later on in the draft that you just think will excel this season?
As far as I can go through kind of a few different ranges. I mean, as far as just really Mr. Consistent that ties your pitching staff together, Kyle Hendricks is a really easy answer, but for some reason he's going well after I think he should. In NFBC leagues, he's available after pick 150 more often than not. So for a guy that is exceptional on the ratios, you're going to have to supply extra strikeouts if you roster him just because he is a little bit lacking on that kind of strikeout area. But another guy that I've gotten on a few teams, and I think he has a chance to kind of take that Sonny Gray type leap in Houston, is Jose Urquidy. This is a guy that has pinpoint control and command, throws anywhere between 94, 95, 96. And I think that he's going to get the ball every fifth day as they need starters down there. So there's a couple of guys. And then kind of going a little bit later, I'm a big fan of AJ Puck before that shoulder thing. So that's kind of a tough pill to swallow. If you can get Puck after pick 350 or after pick 300, excuse me, I think that he's right there in line. And one last guy here to kind of wrap things up, Aaron Savali. This is a guy that's just the latest and the greatest from the Cleveland pitching factory that they have over there. He's the guy that dominated three levels, AA, AAA, and MLB. All of those levels, he was under a 3.0 ERA. So I don't think that you just fake that kind of thing and then just dissipate away. I think that he's going to be very solid in the Cleveland rotation, Aaron Savali.
Okay, I'm writing down on my to-do list to get Aaron a Villar poster and to get you what was his name?
Savali.
Savali. I'm getting you a Savali poster as well, and I will send that to your house because you've mentioned him twice. I'm gonna have to look up Savali. I'm gonna be honest with you. I haven't even. The only thing I could think of is Tony Savali, and you guys are too young to even know who that is. But anyway, hey guys, you two did a great job. You both knocked it out of the park, and that's not easy to do with starting pitchers. I'm just gonna tell you that right now. Lucas, can you tell everybody where they can find you on Twitter or anywhere, anything that you're doing right now?
Yeah, absolutely. You can go ahead and find me on Twitter at BieryPlox. That's BIERYPLOX 33, BieryPlox 33. I do write for Casey Bubba's website, Fantasy Degens. Also been doing a lot of stuff here as far as Big Guy Fantasy Sports, Bob Lone's site with the consistency report stuff. So really exciting stuff there.
All right. And what about you, Nick? I know you got some exciting things going on.
Yeah, y'all can actually find me on Twitter at Nick0629Nick. I'm working with Bob Long as well on the consistency, and I'm also writing for Dynasty Nerds, covering everything fantasy football. I am also working on a recruiting database for high school sports, making it easier for the under-noticed players to get scholarships to D2, D3 schools. Because let's face it, getting recruited in high school is becoming harder and harder.
Yeah, and you're telling me about the app that you're getting together and putting together, and it just so happened that day you were talking to me. One of the people that I know around the area that I live in was talking about how hard it was to get his son to be noticed on the big spectrum for the college sports. So that was really unique to hear you saying that. I said, "Hey, I got a guy." Is what I did. I texted him. I got a guy. Is what I said. But you guys did a great job. You can find all these articles. Big Guy Fantasy Sports. You can check out all that consistency rankings, all the consistency data. It's still free. I don't think Bob's going to plan on charging for it for a long time. I don't know how long, but right now it is free, and I encourage you to check it all out. Thank you so much for listening, and check with us again next week when we'll have two new guests, and we'll be talking more about baseball.